it became kind of difficult once you got into round 3 because there were some real pitfalls there. We had AJ Brown, Nick Chubb, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman, Kyle Pitts, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Josh Allen, DJ Moore, Cortland Sutton, James Conner, and Travis Etienne. And this one, it was a kind of a round where if you were picking in those first 3 picks, you can see there, AJ Brown, Nick Chubb, T. Higgins, their advance rates were fantastic and you didn't have to worry. But where the pain really came was that next core of Michael Pittman, Kyle Pitts, Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, who all really hurt you. Again, in fantasy points over expected, bunch of those right deep into the red. And it feels hard to start this conversation without talking about Kyle Pitts. He's somebody who, for 2 years now, we've been talking about how he could have a real breakout, and the skill is clearly there. But this year, there was one top 5 performance. He's had 3 career touchdowns in 2 seasons. It just felt like early on in this season that there might have been a chance where the Falcons could have been not pass heavy, but more pass neutral, perhaps. But then they discovered that they were really good at running the ball, and everything just from then on became run only. Do you think that we should have been more scared of Kyle Pitts going into that year with Marcus Mariota as the quarterback, and knowing that Drake London was there and that this team still had a long way to go?
Absolutely. And we can look at the coaching staff that is not going to change as well for this upcoming year. I think really what we're trying to wait on for the offseason is who the Falcons get at quarterback, because the issue is that if you watch the Falcons play, they don't design plays for Kyle Pitts or Drake London. They're expected to get open themselves. And then, of course, Marcus Mariota is expected to hit them in stride, which he can't do. And so if you're not scheming like your best player, Kyle Pitts, plays to get him open, it's not really a situation where I want to be back in on him. So I think personally, if you told me to guess right now, I would believe Arthur Smith goes to Ryan Tannehill just because he seems to bring along his friends from Tennessee the most. And that's somewhat concerning given the age range Tannehill's coming in. So we're going to have to wait and see with Kyle Pitts, but it's certainly not a situation where I'm just going to say generational athlete, I'm diving right back in. I'd be more tepid to start drafts than anything.
Yeah, and at the minute, he's going in early underdog drafts, an ADP of 65. So he's not quite as high as we've seen him last year, definitely. And it feels like if the QB situation fell nicely, say Lamar Jackson ended up there, all of a sudden you would find 1,000 pieces of content talking about how much Lamar Jackson's going to target tight ends. So I'm definitely not out on Kyle Pitts, but I'm finding it a little tricky at the minute to imagine that with another new quarterback that he's just going to roll straight on. One player who had a good season was Nick Chubb, 22 big runs, nearly 90 rush yards per game. If you were playing on DraftKings with all those 100-yard games that he got, the 3-point bonus was quite big over there. Kareem Hunt's a free agent and leaving the Browns most likely. Nick Chubb, we know he's not going to get a ton of receptions necessarily, but we've probably not also seen how this offense is really going to look under Deshaun Watson. If Nick Chubb falls to the 3rd round again this year, is he someone you can talk yourself into, John?
Definitely, because as you mentioned, we're expecting Nick Chubb to be a workhorse running back. The team drafted Jerome Ford in the 5th round this past year, so I would imagine he's the one who takes on Kareem Hunt's sprinkling of a role. But overall, yes, we will probably be forced to bet on Deshaun Watson being better at professional football than he was in the last, 6 games he started, because he was one of the worst quarterbacks we watched all year long.
Yeah, definitely. So moving on from Nick Chubb, we've got T. Higgins was somebody that he's a fantastic wide receiver. I mean, he finished as a top 12 wide receiver this year. Over 1,000 yards, 3.0 fantasy points per touch. But it felt like there was a lot of conversations about how both Jamar Chase and T. Higgins could coexist at once, and that we were going to have these huge explosions. And if you started a draft with Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and then got Joe Burrow, you were just cruising towards the fantasy playoffs already. There was only 1 week all season where the two, Higgins and Chase, combined to be top 20 wide receivers at the same time. Is that something that gives you any kind of pause going forward to 2023, or do you think it was more just the Bengals took a little bit of time to get going this year?
What we're seeing now is Jamar Chase has pretty much pushed T. Higgins out of the way entirely. Since Chase returned from injury in week 13, he has a 31% target share. He's averaging 12 targets per game, with double-digit targets in every game except this past week in snowy conditions against the Bills. But even so, led the team in targets and has led the team in targets in every game since he returned. So they're really not even looking at anyone else. Like, the ceiling potential is what you're really chasing with T. Higgins, so it's fine. But I do think from the very beginning, T. Higgins, the ceiling potential in the top of the second round, that's where he was going in some cases, since everyone tried to mix up their exposure between the group of receivers I talked about earlier. T. Higgins was going in that late second round spot, and I think that with Jamar Chase on the team was a little too high for my liking. So I'll probably still be a little more down on him, but for best ball, certainly the ceiling is, of course, there in any given week.
Yeah, and just going back to the advance rates, Josh Allen, our first quarterback here in the third round, I spent a lot of time in the offseason sort of talking about how hard it is for the first QB off the board to pay off that cost, because quite often they don't perform to be the QB1 the following season. And it just seemed like, why take Josh Allen when there's quarterbacks behind him who are a better value? Right. But after crushing it this year with such a great advance rate, and then you can see his fantasy points over expected there at almost 4 per game, he's kind of being pushed even further into 2023 best ball, to the point where he's going inside the first round in some underdog early drafts. Is that too rich for you, or do you think I kind of need to just get on board with the early quarterbacks at the minute?
It's still a little too rich for me, especially because Jalen Hurts finishes the overall QB1 in fantasy points per game. We will not get the same 6th round discount as we did last year for Jalen Hurts, but I could see us getting a discount for the type of archetype player we like a Kyler Murray, for example, like a Justin Fields. And so that's what I'll probably be sitting back on for the rushing upside. But honestly, like Josh Allen, 4th or 5th round, we'll have to see. I don't know. It's really just going to depend what happens with Hurts and Patrick Mahomes more than anything.
Yeah, and Hurts and Patrick Mahomes are sitting tied with an ADP of 13 on the latest underdog draft. So they're real fringe round one as well. And I'm sure that post-draft things will ease back a little bit, but right now those prices just feel too pricey for me. Other players in the first round, I just want to give a quick mention to DJ Moore. Set a career high with 7 touchdowns. He finally got past having 4. It was his worst fantasy finish since his rookie year, though, and it just felt like if Sam Darnold had actually played, then DJ Moore could have been quite productive throughout the year. He was wide receiver 12 in the games that Sam Darnold played as quarterback. And a lot of the offseason, there was kind of the talk of, okay, well, Baker Mayfield's probably the best quarterback this guy's ever played with. Do you think that's kind of the conversation which more people are going to be wise to next year, and not suddenly fall into going, okay, I should be taking this player in the 3rd round because they've got a quarterback upgrade, when the situation doesn't always pan out like that?
It's a situation where coach and quarterback, that's the biggest one, will really dictate where DJ Moore should go. DJ Moore is, although the floodgates open for a career high 7 touchdowns after we waited for 3 consecutive seasons for him to finally score touchdowns, DJ Moore, Terry McLaurin, they're all just continue to be learning lessons and to not force the situation. Like, a player can be amazing like Moore and McLaurin, but if they don't have even comparable competitive quarterback play, it just doesn't matter. It's not a player you want to go overboard on. So I think DJ Moore escaping with getting lucky in touchdowns is a learning curve for everyone, and a lesson that should be taken, just to not force the situation. Like, if a quarterback's bad, just be wary of that, and don't try to force a player up draft board just because you like him.